In an increasingly noisy society, where people just wait for each other to finish speaking before immediately refuting, where everyone wants to be right, and everyone wants to prove themselves better than others, it's easy to feel exhausted by words. The more mature people become, the less they speak. It's not that they don't know what to say, but because they understand that speaking at the wrong time or in the wrong way is like a knife tearing through the heart of the person opposite them. And then they themselves have to bear the consequences. Of the three karmas, body, speech, and mind, the Buddha taught that speech karma is the easiest to create and also the hardest to avoid. A single word can wound a person, fracture a family, or plunge a soul into despair. Yet, just one word can also redeem a suffering heart, helping someone cross the long night of hopelessness. Thus, words are the most powerful force, creating blessings or sowing karma. Amidst such clamor, those who know how to be silent are often seen as timid. Some think silence means losing, being weak, or not daring to resist. But in reality, a wise person is not one who speaks a lot, but one who knows when to be silent. Silence is not giving up. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is the wisdom of steadfastness, a conscious choice to protect one's mind from the storm of anger and to shield others from words that could hurt them for a lifetime. There are arguments that would not have led to rupture if one person had chosen to be silent. There are marriages that would not have ended in tears if one person had known to take a step back. In life, some people regret for many years simply because they couldn't hold their tongue for a few minutes. Others, having hurt loved ones with words, live their whole lives with remorse. Therefore, a truly mature person is not one who speaks every thought or expresses every emotion, but one who knows how to guard their mind, how to remain steadfast in silence. One day, there was a small family. The mother was old, her eyes dim, her hands weak. During dinner, she dropped her bowl, and rice scattered on the floor. Her son frowned and scolded us, "Mother, everything you do is clumsy. Living like this is so tiring." His daughter-in-law, hearing this, added a few harsh words. The mother just bowed her head, not uttering a single word in protest. That evening, she sat alone by the stove, quietly eating her cold meal without complaint or reaction. The grandson saw this, and the next day made a small wooden plate. His father asked, "What are you doing?" The child replied, "So when you're old, Dad, I'll give you a separate plate to eat from, just like Grandma and Grandpa." The father fell silent, but this time it was the silence of remorse. Sometimes it's the silent ones who teach us the deepest lessons. Some words, unspoken, penetrate deeper into the hearts of others than any spoken phrase. Those who love us most sometimes choose silence to protect us from our own impatience. The Buddha taught that if speech does not bring peace, it is best to remain silent like a sage. For speaking at the right time is wisdom. Speaking at the wrong time is speech karma. A wise person does not need to use words to prove their self-worth, for their mind is broad enough to contain both right and wrong without anger. The more mature one becomes, the more they understand that what is worth saying will be said with compassion and mindfulness, not with a desire to win. Silence is not weakness. It is the courage of one who knows how to guard their mind. Words, once spoken, are like arrows. Once released, they cannot be retrieved. Therefore, one who practices the Dharma knows how to guard their words, to guard their speech, as they would guard the blessings of their own life. When words settle, the mind finds space for peace. When the mind is at peace, blessings will naturally come. By speaking a little less, we shed many burdens. By striving for victory a little less, we retain peace within ourselves. And when we no longer need to speak too much to prove anything, we will hear the deepest sound within ourselves. That is the sound of a calm mind, of enlightened wisdom, of a life as light as a cloud, no longer suffering because of words. Have you ever sat alone and suddenly recalled a conversation from long ago, remembering a phrase you uttered, and suddenly felt your heart heavy? Perhaps it was a word of blame, a sarcastic remark, or simply a few careless words that passed by. But the more you remember, the more you feel tormented. In a life full of pressure, people often choose to relieve stress through words. We speak to prove we are right, to make others understand us, to demand fairness, to vent frustrations. Yet it is precisely in such turbulent emotional moments that words easily become knives, making hearts bleed. And it is also then that we sow seeds of suffering into our own consciousness. Speaking is easy, but holding back is truly difficult. Someone once said that the hardest thing in life is not climbing mountains or crossing oceans, but controlling oneself when anger arises, especially controlling one's mouth when the heart is restless. Sometimes just one word is enough to ruin a good relationship. Words are like small sparks. If carefully tended, they bring warmth. But if recklessly fanned, they can burn down an entire field of the heart. Every day, when we wake up, we enter a life full of communication. We have to talk to colleagues, we have to talk to family, we talk to make a living, we talk when we're sad, even just browsing social media. We get caught up in countless opinions and arguments, where everyone needs to talk, needs to express thoughts, needs to prove their ego at all costs. That's why speech karma is created the fastest. Sometimes unintentionally, and sometimes intentionally. Some people think they're just saying a little to vent their anger, but they don't realize those words etch deep into the hearts of others, like an indelible scar. Many warm relationships turn cold simply because of a few words. A wife blames her husband a few times, and the next day he leaves. A child accidentally speaks harshly to their mother, but doesn't get a chance to apologize before their mother is gone. Someone, in a moment of anger, yells, and by the time they calm down, it's too late. Such stories often appear around us, like a gentle but deeply penetrating reminder that speech is something people must learn throughout life if they hope to maintain peace. Of the three karmas, body, speech, and mind, speech karma is considered the easiest to create. Body karma requires time to act. Mind karma requires much thought to initiate. But the mouth only needs a second to create cause and effect. One can regret in thought, one can stop an action. But words, once uttered, cannot be taken back. The Buddha taught that words are like an arrow shot from a bow. Once it's gone, it cannot return. Many people say, "I'm hot-tempered, so I say what I want." But in reality, speaking in anger doesn't show strength. It only exposes an immature mind. A person's life may go through many ups and downs, learning many lessons. But if they haven't learned to control their speech, they will still easily suffer, easily be hurt, and easily lose many precious things. Some say they must speak up to defend what is right. But if that right causes pain to others, it is no longer truly righteous. Silence is often a form of wisdom. Speaking less is not yielding, and certainly not cowardly, but knowing how to face one's emotions with mindfulness. The channel of responsive Buddhist teachings reminds us. In Buddhism, there's a saying that speaking less reduces karma. When karma is reduced, blessings will arise, because every word carries energy. The energy of love brings us closer. The energy of anger drives us apart forever. Speech creates karma because it is a doorway from the mind. If the mind is at peace, words are gentle. If the mind is agitated, words are harsh. If the mind is angry, words are as dangerous as sharp knives. Someone once confessed, "I find myself scary when I'm angry, because at that moment I can't think of anything but wanting to win that argument. And after each time, I regret it. But I can't get back what I've lost." That's also the nature of speech karma. Once created, not every apology can resolve it. Not every wound can heal, because some wounds lie in the hearts of others, unseen, but when touched, remembered for a lifetime. The story of Nam and Hui will perhaps make us understand better. They were close friends since school, overcoming many difficulties together, sharing many memories. Later, they both worked on a common project. Let's call it a shared dream they had cherished for a long time. Then, during a period when work ran into trouble, progress slowed, and financial pressure weighed heavily. External scrutiny made Nam tense. In that meeting, Nam lost his composure and turned to scold Hui in front of everyone. "You're always irresponsible, always slow at everything." Just a few short sentences, but they were like a knife slicing through a 10-year friendship. Hui didn't argue back, didn't explain. Hui just remained silent. But it wasn't a weak silence. It was the silence of a wounded heart. After that meeting, Hui withdrew from the project. Nam began to feel disheartened, but he thought his friend was just sulking a bit. He waited for a message, a call, but all there was a deafening void. The relationship was never the same again. Later, Nam recounted that he had wished that day he had known to keep silent, or at least chosen to speak more gently, known to wait until he was calm before talking. Perhaps everything would have been different. But life doesn't have if-onlys. Some things, once lost, are realized to have come at too great a price. That 10-year friendship suddenly ended just because of a few seconds of anger. Nam realized that words spoken in anger are like a fireball. Once thrown, they cannot be retrieved. And thoughtless word can hurt others, but it can also bring misfortune to oneself. Some people live their whole lives virtuously, but lose their good reputation simply due to speech karma. Some people's reputation, built over many years, can be destroyed by just one sentence. Some people lose their job, lose trust, lose someone they once loved, just because they spoke carelessly. Speech karma is not just about harsh words, but also about carelessness. Speaking playfully, but hurting others, is also creating karma. Speaking to prove oneself right also inflates the ego. Some people want to react whenever something happens, wanting to win with words, but rarely look back at what their own mind contains. If we look deeply, we will see that the root of angry words is the ego. The ego wants to be recognized, so it must win with words. The ego wants to control, so it always has to explain to prove itself right. The ego fears others won't understand, so it has to talk a lot, has to argue to the end. The more attached we are to the ego, the easier it is to slide into an endless spiral of arguments. Those who speak less are often those who understand deeply, because they know that words are not the only means of conveying value. Some things can only be felt by listening silently. Some lessons only appear when we choose to be silent and look closely into our own minds. The Buddha taught that everything is due to cause and effect. Words sow seeds through sound, but the harvest will return as emotion. A word that makes someone sad will one day make someone else sad in the same way. A word that shames someone will one day make us feel humiliated in a similar situation. What we sow for others will return to us at the most unexpected moment. Blessings are like that, and karma is like that. Everything is formed by every word in life. Someone once asked, "Why do I practice and do so many good deeds, yet my heart doesn't feel at peace?" Perhaps it's because speech karma still remains. Some people chant sutras every day, but when they meet family, they speak harsh words. Some people bow to the Buddha with great reverence, but step out the door and scold others with an unpleasant tone. This means their mind has not truly touched peace. The Buddha taught that practice is not just about maintaining outward form, but about guarding the mind. To guard the mind, one must guard the mouth, because the mouth is the door through which the mind expresses itself. Guarding words is guarding blessings. Speak less to listen more. Some people think that defending their opinion is important, but sometimes looking deeper reveals that preserving the hearts of others is what is truly precious. In life, not everyone deserves our anger. Not everything needs to be spoken about. Some words, if held back, will bring more serenity to the heart. Some moments of silence will bring deeper wisdom than 1,000 arguments. When we slow down and look, we realize how much inner turmoil comes only from the desire for others to understand us correctly. But whether understood or not, loved or not loved, sometimes it's beyond our control. We can only control our own mind. The mind is at peace when the mouth is at peace. When words settle, the mind finds space for peace. We can try to practice how to speak gently, how to speak honestly, but without hurting anyone. How to speak so that the listener feels shared with instead of judged. The sutras teach that before speaking any word, pass it through 3 small gates in the mind. First, ask yourself if this word is true. Second, ask if this word is necessary. Third, ask if this word will make the listener happy. If it passes all 3 gates, then the word is ready to be spoken. If not, hold it back like an unripe seed. Don't rush to sow when the soil is not ready, because sowing at the right time will bring forth flowers. Sowing at the wrong season will only bring trouble. The solution to transforming speech karma is not complete silence, but knowing how to speak skillfully. The Buddha did not teach us to be mute in life. He only advised us to use words like medicine. Medicine heals sickness. It doesn't create new sicknesses. There are words that should be spoken to help others see the right path. but they must be spoken with a compassionate and understanding heart. There are words that should be spoken to ease tension, but they must be spoken with genuine listening. There are words that should be spoken to share sorrow, but they must be spoken with a sympathetic heart. Words can make the world gentler if they come from a compassionate heart. When you encounter a situation that makes you want to get angry, you can try to take a step back, breathe deeply, slowly, and then look at the emotion within you. Ask yourself where this emotion comes from. Ask yourself what you will gain by speaking right now, besides exhaustion. If you can, just take a minute, or even a few seconds. Your mind will clearly see that words spoken now are not for healing, but just for venting anger. And when you realize that, you will gain the strength to be silent. Silent, but not enduring. Silent to guard the mind. Silent to cultivate compassion. Silent so as not to sow more seeds of suffering in the fertile ground of your own blessings. Responsive Buddhist Teachings channel sends you a calm reminder. In life, some things, once lost, can be found again. But some people, once they are gone, do not return. Some wounds can heal, but some scars in the hearts of others will remain forever. Words sometimes don't kill anyone, but they can change a heart forever. Choose to slow down before speaking. Guard your mind before uttering words. Speak less to reduce karma. When karma is reduced, blessings will come. And wherever blessings are present, peace of mind will find its way, like a cool spring in a drought-stricken day of life. If one day you feel your heart heavy with words you regret having said, do not despair. The realization itself is the first step of awakening. From today, you can start a new path, the path of one who knows how to speak with understanding and love. And that path is the one that leads to a life with less suffering, a heart with less remorse, and a soul open to blessings. Have you ever sat in a conversation and suddenly realized that the more you talk, the more easily you make mistakes, the more you argue, the more tired your heart becomes, the more you try to prove yourself right, the more the other person doesn't want to listen? Then, at some point, you choose silence. Not because you lost, not because you are weak, but because you understand that words no longer bring peace. And if there is no peace, what is the point of speaking? In today's life, the louder people speak, the more easily they get attention. The more people talk, the more easily they are considered knowledgeable. Strong-willed people are often seen as assertive. But according to the spirit of Buddhist teachings, a deep-thinking person is one who knows how to be silent, and a discerning person always chooses to keep their mind like unruffled water. For when the mind is still agitated, wisdom cannot appear. And in the clamor of words, the seeds of anger easily sprout. There are times when you find yourself drawn into conversations in the marketplace, at the office, or within the family, where everyone has their own opinion, and everyone tries to maintain their viewpoint. Everyone wants to protect their ego. Everyone wants to prove their correctness. And precisely in such moments, words are no longer a means to convey understanding, but become a spear used to pierce the self-esteem of others. Then they retaliate in kind. And so a war begins. And the first one hurt is always the one who doesn't know how to guard their speech karma. In Buddhist scriptures, it is taught that if speech does not bring harmony, does not help nourish a compassionate mind, then silence itself is a practice. This practice requires no form, no ritual, just alertness and patience. It is the wisdom of one who observes cause and effect instead of reacting impulsively. Many people think that talking a lot is a sign of strength, assertiveness, or self-expression. But true strength does not lie in how much we can say, but in how much we can control our inner emotions. A wise person is not afraid of being misunderstood, because they know that those who understand them do not need explanation, and those who do not want to understand will find explanations useless. A wise person does not let emotions guide them, because they have learned to see everything through the lens of cause and effect. They know that every reaction sows a seed. Every word uttered becomes a cause in the mind that will bear fruit one day. Therefore, they choose to take a step back, maintaining a quiet space in their mind to observe everything that is happening. That is not passivity, but the strength of self-mastery. For the greatest wisdom lies in the mind's ability to stop itself before a mistake occurs. In a small market, at the bustling corner of the village, amidst the shouts of buyers and sellers, lived an old man named Mr. 𝗕𝗂. Everyone knew him to be a kind man. He sold vegetables every morning, rarely engaging in gossip or arguing with anyone. People often said that Mr. 𝗕𝗂 was a man of few words. Few ever heard him complain or speak harshly to anyone. One time, a customer handed him money and didn't notice they had overpaid. Afterward, the person returned, loudly claiming that Mr. 𝗕𝗂 had taken the extra money and deliberately not returned it. The entire neighborhood buzzed with chatter. People gossiped. Some criticized. Some believed Mr. 𝗕𝗂 was trustworthy, but others suspected him. Amidst the back and forth, Mr. 𝗕𝗂 merely smiled. He didn't refute, nor did he offer an explanation. All day long, he continued selling vegetables as usual, without a single word of complaint. Late in the afternoon, the market manager checked the camera footage and discovered that the extra money had been placed by Mr. 𝗕𝗂 in a paper box nearby, and he hadn't had a chance to return it because the customer left in a hurry before he could say anything. The customer came to apologize, and everyone was embarrassed by the misunderstanding. But Mr. 𝗕𝗂 just smiled gently and said he didn't mind. From that day on, everyone respected him even more. They saw that his silence was not weakness, but a quiet strength that made everyone admire him. The story of Mr. 𝗕𝗂 is like a mirror reflecting a truth that not everyone recognizes. Some words bring us closer, but some words push us apart forever. Some misunderstandings are resolved with a smile. Some anger is soothed simply by timely silence. When our heart wants to refute, wants to win, try to stop. Who knows? Maybe just a little calm. We could have avoided an unnecessary karma. Many people regret their entire lives just because they couldn't guard their mouth for a few minutes of anger. A word carelessly spoken, a glance elsewhere, a turning and walking away can sometimes be the end of a relationship. Words can bring blessings, but they can also wound a soul so deeply that it never heals. When we understand this, we will know that guarding our mouth is guarding our mind. When words cease, the mind begins to settle. When the mind settles, wisdom begins to emerge. In Buddhist teachings, It is said that one who practices is not one who avoids life, but one who is mindful in life, mindful in words, in mind, and in every reaction to every circumstance. When someone says something unkind about us, ask ourselves if those words are true. If they are true, we should be grateful for the opportunity to correct ourselves. If they are not true, we have even less reason to be angry. For according to cause and effect, one who sows wrong causes will naturally reap wrong effects. But if we keep our mind pure, blessings will come our way. Having seen cause and effect so clearly, what is there left to argue about? One who sees far will choose peace over victory. For they know that what we try to hold on to today may have no value tomorrow. Maintaining a calm mind amidst chaos is a lesson that every mature person must learn. Sometimes, life doesn't require us to prove anything. It only requires us to guard ourselves so as not to lose the inherent goodness in our heart. A truly strong person is not one who speaks loudly, nor one who reacts quickly. A strong person is one who does not allow their mind to be swayed by momentary emotions. A strong person is one who knows what they're thinking, what they're saying, and what those words will create in the future. A strong person is one who knows how to take a step back to look deeply into the reality unfolding. And the more mature we become, the more we will see that timely silence is wiser than any argument. A shallow person will rely on words to express themselves. A profound person will rely on stillness to observe themselves. A shallow person seeks to assert themselves by comparing themselves to others. A profound person understands that everyone has their own unique karma. No one is the same on life's journey through cause and effect. The shallow use words as weapons. The wise use patience as armor. And a truly enlightened person uses compassion as a stream to cool all anger in the heart of the other person. If one day you find yourself caught in an argument, try to stop and take a deep breath. Ask yourself, if I say one more sentence, will my heart feel lighter or much heavier? Silence is not always the easy choice, but it is always the wise choice when the mind is not steady. Sometimes, keeping silent is saving yourself and those around you from an unnecessary breakdown. Speaking a little less is reducing karma. When karma is reduced, blessings will gradually arise. When the mind knows how to guard its words, it will also know how to guard itself. And when the mind can maintain peace, life will unfold better than we imagine. Blessings do not fall from the sky. Blessings are the result of moments of patience, knowing when to step back, knowing when to be silent when words could hurt others. Every day we become a little more silent. Our mind grows a little more. Every time we hold back a little, blessings come a little closer. Maybe we don't see it now, but if we keep our mind pure, knowing to aim for good, sooner or later, life will return to us what we deserve. And one day, we will understand that silence is not evasion, but how we build a peaceful sky within our mind. No one can take away that sky, no matter how many times life churns. From the stillness within the mind, the light of wisdom will begin to appear. That is when we become light-hearted about right and wrong, know how to smile at gossip, know how to listen to life with a peaceful mind. That is when we walk the path of the Dharma in life without losing ourselves. May the listener understand that silence is not weakness, but the wonderful strength of a truly mature person. If today I speak less, who knows? Tomorrow, my mind will be at peace and blessings will come. I wish you a peaceful day. When you need to speak, speak with compassion. When you need to be silent with wisdom. And when the mind is broad enough, words will naturally become gentle, and life will also find peace from there. Perhaps each of us has experienced that feeling of sitting in a conversation, but not truly being present. Others speak, but we just wait for our turn to react. Before their words are finished, we interrupt. Before their thought is complete, we are quick to refute. It seems that in most conversations, the majority of us want to win, want to hold on to right and wrong, want to protect our own ego, rather than seeking to understand the other person's emotions. And when we no longer want to understand, the conversation immediately turns into a silent struggle. We talk a lot, but our hearts are not at peace. We try to win, but in the end, we only feel tired. We don't understand why the more we talk, the further the distance between us and others grows. In life, everyone wishes to be heard by others, but ironically, we rarely truly listen to others. When we listen with a reactive mind, not a mind of understanding. A reactive mind always comes with judgment, worry, a desire to win, and fear of being hurt. A mind of understanding, however, comes from complete presence. We are present not only by hearing words with our ears, but by perceiving with our hearts. When listening with the heart, words are no longer the objective. Instead, we can touch the hidden sorrow of the person opposite us. One who carries a burden is like a leaf in the rainy season. Just a gentle gust of wind is enough to make them tremble. If we do not listen gently, they will close their heart like a door that no longer wants to open. And so, we lose the opportunity to build a compassionate connection between people. According to the spirit of Buddhist teachings, listening is a practice. Listening is the practice of mindfulness. When we listen to others without judgment in our minds, without reacting, without waiting for them to finish speaking so we can refute, that is when our mind is abiding in the present moment. Because to truly listen, we must let go of the ego that is trying to prove us right. We must let go of the thought of wanting to win. We must let go of the desire to control others according to our own way of thinking. Just listen. Don't interrupt. Don't impose. Listen to feel. Listen to understand. Listen to see that the person in front of us is also suffering. And that is why they are like that. An angry person is also a hurting person. A talkative person is also a lonely person. If we can hear that pain, we won't need any words of opposition. We will only want to offer a hand instead of raising a barrier of self-importance. In an ordinary family, in a small town, there was 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗶𝗵 and her 14-year-old daughter. Lately, the girl had often been irritable and quick-tempered. Whenever 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗶𝗵 offered advice, the girl would respond disagreeably. At such times, 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗶𝗵 often thought her daughter was becoming disrespectful and disobedient, so she would immediately scold her. As soon as the words of reproach were uttered, the girl's tears would well up. In a moment of extreme tension, the girl suddenly burst into tears, saying, "Mom, you've never listened to me finish a sentence." 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗶𝗵 froze. Those words echoed like a bell in her mind. She suddenly realized that perhaps her daughter needed to be understood, not judged. She truly felt that all this time she had only listened with her ears, never with her heart. She didn't argue anymore, didn't react, but gently said, "Go ahead and speak." For the first time, she let her daughter express everything in her heart. In the child's trembling voice was the fear of being judged, a sense of being lost, a feeling of being alone and misunderstood, and also the desire to be seen by her mother as a growing person, not just a child to be controlled. 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗶𝗵's silent listening at that moment opened a doorway in the girl's soul. And after being fully heard, the girl became calmer. Her words were less resentful, her eyes less tense. When the heart feels safe, it no longer needs to defend itself. This story is not uncommon in life. In fact, between people, what we always hope to receive is listening, not victory. Many arguments are actually disguised cries for help. People speak not because they want to win, but because they fear loneliness. People speak not because they want to appear strong, but because they fear being underestimated. People speak not because they want to hurt anyone, but because their own hearts were already bruised. If we know how to listen, we will naturally speak less, because we know that sometimes understanding is more important than any rebuttal. When words settle, we can clearly see what the true needs of the person facing us are. And at that very moment, compassion within us begins to bloom like a flower just met by sunlight. In Buddhist teachings, one who knows how to listen is mindful. One who knows how to listen also has a compassionate heart. Because to truly listen to others, we must overcome our own ego. And the ego is the root of suffering. The ego makes us want to win, want to prove ourselves right, want to say things that make others bow their heads. But the bigger the ego, the more the heart suffers. When our mind is steady and calm, we listen to understand, listen to share, and listen to make others feel loved. At that point, our words will be as light as clouds, as warm as the sun, and as healing as a spring bed. Those are words arising from a peaceful mind. Those who hear them will not feel attacked, but will feel supported. Conversely, when we listen with a reactive mind, we will only wait for the other person to make a mistake to counterattack. Listening to respond, listening to retaliate, listening to defend. In that state of mind, all words become weapons. Words are wind, but can turn into knives. Words have no form, but can hurt people, like external wounds. And many people are haunted by those words their whole lives. Therefore, a wise person learns to listen with peace, without rushing to react. They observe, they understand, and they only speak when it is truly necessary to speak, listening to understand, not listening to react. This is a lesson that helps heal many wounds in people's hearts without needing any condemnation. When 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗶𝗵 began practicing listening, her family life changed in a very gentle way. No longer were there scenes of "Mom says, shut up," and then the child closes their bedroom door to cry alone. No longer was there tension when they were in the same space. Instead, there were evenings when mother and daughter sat, drank water, and confided in each other. When the girl felt her mother was truly listening, she began to trust and open up. Her teenage psyche gradually stabilized, and the change didn't come from heavy lectures. The change came from the safe space of listening. Listening is a healing gift, while winning only deepens wounds. It's the same in each of our lives. Have you ever felt that you tried to say a lot, but no one listened to you? No. Have you ever used many arguments, but in the end, people just silently walked away? We have all been like that. And perhaps each of us has also silently walked away from a conversation. Because when we are no longer listened to, our presence feels lost. Conversely, when we feel understood, we don't need to say too much. A truly listened to person will be less angry, less worried, and their heart will become much softer. One who knows how to listen is walking the path of understanding and love. When we know how to listen with a compassionate mind, we are sowing a good seed. That seed will then bear fruit as blessings in life. For one who listens to others is one who has broadened their heart. The wider the heart, the smaller the suffering. The more receptive the heart, the more blessings flow in. Sometimes, simply by listening to someone with kindness, you have helped them stop negative thoughts in their mind. In a world full of pressure, listening is the most precious gift you can give to others without losing anything yourself. And the good news is that this gift not only brings happiness to others, but also nurtures peace within yourself. Listen to understand once, and you will speak less once. Listen with a full heart, and you will not need to strive for victory with lips always wanting to refute. Listen with compassion, and you will see that every word you speak becomes a good seed in the fertile ground of your mind and life. Speak less to listen more, judge less to empathize more, want to win less to learn how to love. If today you are suffering because someone won't listen to you, try to ask yourself, have you ever listened to that person with an open heart? If today you feel lonely, perhaps you should also ask if anyone has ever felt lonely talking to you. An honest question sometimes opens a path to peace in the heart more than any comforting words. When we listen deeply enough, we will see that suffering is not to be fought against, but to be understood, to be empathized with, and to learn to love each other more. When listening, you not only help others heal, you are also healing yourself. It is a silent but miraculous journey. And perhaps that is also how we can speak less to suffer less in life. Our mind will be at peace, and blessings will come. I wish you peace. I wish you to know how to listen to understand. And I wish you to feel that sometimes timely silence is more powerful than any loud words in life. Have you noticed how many sentences you speak each day? How many times you interrupt? How many times you want to explain? How many times you try to prove that you are more right than others? Few of us ever stop to reflect on the words we utter. But strangely, it is precisely those things that come out of our mouths that lead people through countless sufferings. Today, let's try to look deep into our minds for a moment. Try to sit still and see why words affect our peace so much. Because the more we speak, the more agitated the mind becomes. And an agitated mind immediately gives rise to troubles. Just like water being stirred up cannot reflect the moon's shadow. Therefore, to have a peaceful mind, one must first learn to guard one's words, practice speaking a little less, and the mind will become much lighter. In this busy life, some people still think that talking a lot is a sign of knowledge, a way for others to listen and respect them. But in reality, the more we talk, the easier it is to fall into irritability, the more we like to intrude into other people's conversations. We are more easily swayed by emotions. As soon as a little self-importance arises in the mind, the mouth immediately wants to react. The mind thinks, "Why don't they understand me?" and immediately speaks to clarify. The mind is annoyed. "How dare they say that about me?" and immediately wants to win. And so, trouble begins. The mind falters. Words become a strong wind that blows life's boat off course. Sometimes, just one word uttered can make a person lose their reputation, affection, relationships, opportunities, and even their inner peace. Just try to recall, every day we hear arguments somewhere in our daily lives, in family meetings, in office conversations, in the market, on the street, even in our own homes. Why do people talk so much, yet their hearts aren't truly happy? Because every time we talk a lot, our mind raises a clamor. The more clamor, the harder it is to be at peace. The harder it is to be at peace, the heavier life feels. The ancients had a saying, "A word spoken, 4 horses cannot catch it." Once words leave the mouth, even if we regret them, they cannot be taken back. It's like an arrow that has been shot. Once it has hit someone's heart, even an apology will take time to heal the wound. Therefore, silence is not weakness, but a practice of self-restraint, guarding the mind in deep stillness so as not to utter words that will make us pay a price. According to the spirit of Buddhist teachings, speech karma is one of the 3 karmas that shape each person's life. Body karma comes from actions, mind karma from thoughts, and speech karma from words. Of these 3, speech karma is perhaps the easiest to create, because it happens quickly, too quickly for the mind to even notice. Sometimes, we don't even know we're angry. But the angry words have already been uttered. We haven't even realized our self-importance, but the argument has already begun. Speech karma is like a small flame. Just a gentle gust of wind can ignite it into a large fire, burning down the good things we have built before. Whoever knows how to guard their words guards their mind. When the mind is at peace, life is at peace. When the mind is chaotic, everything is chaotic. Some people say that silence makes them feel weak, afraid that others will think they have no arguments, afraid of losing face, afraid of being judged. It is because of this fear that people try to talk a lot, talk forcefully, talk so that no one dares to look down on them. But in reality, when you talk a lot to prove yourself, you are empowering others to control your mind. Just one disagreeable word, and we immediately react. Just a small misunderstanding, and we immediately get angry. In this way, we are living by instinct rather than wisdom. But those who practice, who are mindful, hold every word back on their tongue with awareness. Restraining the mouth is self-control. Wisdom is not in speaking a lot, but in knowing when to be silent. In the sutras, the Buddha taught that words are like sweet honey, but easily sticky. Those who practice the Buddha's teachings must consider each word to see if it is wholesome or unwholesome, and whether its fruit will be peace or suffering. If one knows how to guard their mouth, body and mind will reduce karma, and when karma is reduced, blessings will come. Each time we hold back an angry word in our mouth is a time a blessing is sown. Each time we refrain from an argument is a step further on the spiritual path. Holding back is not weakness, but because we understand that peace is not won by arguing, but by inner self-control. There is a small story that contains a very important lesson about the value of silence. It is the story of 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗱𝗵 and a special family meeting. 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗱𝗵's family was large and often had to meet to discuss common matters. But every time they met, it would devolve into heated arguments. Everyone tried to express their opinion and hoped others would listen to them. The meetings would only be peaceful for the first few minutes, then turn into a war of words. Everyone was tired. Everyone was annoyed. 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗱𝗵 was a straightforward person, believing that talking a lot would help others understand the issue, that thorough analysis would lead to common ground. But the more he talked, the more intense the arguments became. He used to think that if he didn't speak up, everything would get chaotic, because others wouldn't understand things as well as he did. Then one day, in the middle of a family meeting, which was starting to get tense as usual, 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗱𝗵 suddenly felt tired. He thought he'd try being silent. From beginning to end of that meeting, he just sat and listened, not interrupting, not analyzing, not arguing. Surprisingly, that meeting was the most peaceful one ever. Everyone had a chance to express their thoughts fully, without being cut off, so they also spoke more slowly. When they weren't competing for words, everyone naturally knew how to listen to each other more. One person finished speaking, then another began. The atmosphere became light, and behavior suddenly became gentle. After the meeting, someone looked at 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗱𝗵 and asked why he didn't offer any opinions as usual. He just smiled and said, "Today, I wanted to give everyone a chance to talk among themselves." No one knew that he had realized that talking too much sometimes doesn't help solve problems, but makes them more tangled. 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗱𝗵 recounted to his relatives that in that moment of silent listening, he felt lighter than ever before. No need to try to win an argument. No need to try to control the meeting. No need to prove his point of view. He felt like he was let down onto a soft chair after a long, hard day. For many years, he had thought he bore the responsibility of helping everyone understand correctly, so he had to talk a lot. But at that moment, he realized that the person who spoke the least was the one who kept their mind most steadfast. That very moment helped him understand a deep lesson. When we speak less, the mind moves less. And when the mind moves less, everything naturally lightens. That little story helps us see more clearly that silence is a kind of wisdom. Some say that keeping silent is like putting on armor to withstand the winds of life. The winds of life can be misunderstandings, criticisms, skeptical glances, pressures from work, and family. The wind can blow strong, but if we can keep our mind from reacting with hasty words, our mind will not be swept away. Silence does not mean escaping, but knowing how to stand firm, knowing how to preserve our energy from being caught up in the chaos of life. Troubles often begin from an agitated mind. The mind is agitated by thinking too much, worrying too much, blaming too much, reacting too quickly. When the mind is agitated, words and actions easily cause suffering for both oneself and others. If only we could see this cause once, we would understand why silence is so important. Silence is also a form of practice. The Buddha once taught that practitioners must not only keep their body, speech, and mind pure, but also know how to live in mindfulness. Mindfulness is not just sitting in meditation or chanting sutras, but also being aware in every breath while speaking, and even in moments of silence. When we are silent in mindfulness, we can clearly hear the voice of our own heart. And when we clearly hear the voice of our own heart, we will no longer need to try to make others understand. This life may not need us to say anything more, but it may very well need us to speak less. Speaking less is suffering less. Because when words are few, the mind has space for peace to return. Try to recall the times you sat still and didn't speak. Perhaps then you saw an unusual light within yourself. Blessings also arise from there, because when we guard our mouth, it means we are observing a precept. When we observe a precept, we are protecting our mind from the winds of life. That is the foundation of practice, and also the true path to peace. So if one day you feel utterly exhausted, don't try to explain anymore. If you see others angry, don't rush to respond. If you feel an urge to react, try taking a deep breath. Perhaps the person speaking to you is suffering greatly and doesn't know any other way to express it. Perhaps your own mind is stirring, wanting to win. But if you can just stop for 7 seconds, you won't say things you'll regret later. At that moment, silence is happiness. Silence is wisdom. And silence is the first step for one who knows how to practice. The Responsive Buddhist Teachings channel just wants to send you a very slow and gentle reminder. You are not always strong when you respond quickly. Sometimes, just by being silent, you have won over yourself. A silent victory, but it is the greatest victory in a person's life. Speak a little less. Nurture a peaceful mind, and you will see blessings begin to sprout from that moment. Have you ever felt an urge to speak up immediately, but then heard a small voice within your mind advising you to calm down first? Perhaps each of us has experienced that feeling. An argument hasn't even begun, but the heart is already agitated. A word hasn't been uttered, but the mind is already wavering between right and wrong. A retort is waiting on the tip of the tongue, and just a little more, anger will turn into fire, burning away the inner peace. Yet, strangely enough, if there is a moment when we know how to be silent, even for just a few minutes, a few hours, or a few days, the waves in the mind immediately slow down and settle. Then, at some point, we suddenly realize that this very silence has saved us from creating karma, from uttering hurtful words that we would later regret and be unable to retrieve. In modern life, people talk a lot, but listen very little. People see silence as a disadvantage, as weakness, as submissiveness. But the more one talks, the greater the suffering. The more one strives to win, the more restless the heart becomes. The more one tries to prove oneself right to others, the more one loses one's own peace. And so, we become exhausted, not because life is too harsh, but because there are too many voices within us. The voice of the ego wanting recognition, the voice of hurt wanting protection, the voice of anger wanting to resist. And amidst these voices, we no longer hear the truth. We only hear what the ego wants to hear. We only say what the ego wants to say. And in that vortex, we lose ourselves without realizing it. A Buddhist practitioner, or simply someone who desires to live in peace, needs to learn to be silent with full awareness. Silence is not reluctantly keeping one's mouth shut. Silence is also not suppressing emotions and then hurting oneself. True silence is when we are stable enough to observe emotions instead of chasing them. When we know to take a step back to clearly see the anger in our hearts. When we don't rush to react, but choose to breathe deeply, to see that our mind still has a very soft place, completely unmoved by anything external. When we are silent, the mind no longer focuses on right or wrong, winning or losing, but begins to look within itself. By observing the breath, we begin to realize the fluctuations in emotions. By observing emotions, we clearly see the roots of anger, delusion, sadness, and hatred. And when we see clearly, we no longer want to speak up. We no longer want to argue. We just want to keep our mind at peace, because a peaceful mind is the most valuable thing we have. Psychology is also very clear. When emotions are high, especially anger, our brain's ability to reason decreases, and any words spoken at that moment are unlikely to be wise. Just a few minutes of silence, and breathing will help the body relax. The mind will calm down, and negative energy will be reduced by nearly half. Buddhist teachings also say that when we are 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗱𝗵 and do not add harsh words, we are not sowing more bad karma. An angry word can make us regret for a lifetime. A cruel word can permanently fracture a relationship, but just a little timely silence can preserve our kindness, maintain civility between people, and keep our own clarity. The Buddha taught that speech karma is one of the 3 heaviest karmas. Karma created by the body can still be seen and recognized. Karma arising from the mind is often very quick and difficult to control. But karma created by words often appears unexpectedly in moments when we are least on guard. Sometimes, just a small insult will cause us to retaliate with words full of fiery anger. Sometimes, just a misunderstanding causes us to utter words that hurt others. That is why practitioners always guard their speech karma as one guards a treasure. Speaking good words is sowing blessings. Speaking evil words is sowing karma. Speaking merely to satisfy the ego is awakening suffering. But being silent to keep the mind clear is taking a step towards liberation. People often think that living means being strong, striving, proving what one wants. But in Buddhism, a strong person is not one who always defeats an opponent, but one who can conquer themselves, conquer their own ego of anger and delusion. That is the hardest thing. Every time we remain silent in the face of challenges or gossip, it is a time we conquer ourselves. Truly wise people don't need to say much. They just need to live, just need to observe, just need to walk very calmly. They understand that life is impermanent. Winning or losing today has no meaning for tomorrow. And all the things we say in anger will only cause us more suffering. There is a very relatable story in life about Ms. 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗵 and Ms. 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗵𝗵, who worked together in the same company. At first, both were harmonious, but gradually, due to different personalities, small misunderstandings arose. Ms. 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗵 felt Ms. 𝗕𝗂𝗱 was quiet, somewhat cold, while Ms. 𝗕𝗂𝗱 just wanted to focus on work, not enjoying idle chatter or participating in office gossip. Then one day, Ms. 𝗕𝗂𝗱 overheard that Ms. 𝗕𝗂𝗱 had spoken ill of her to some other colleagues. The story she heard was that Miss Cook claimed Ms. Hien was arrogant, looked down on everyone, always worked alone, and wasn't sociable. At that moment, Ms. Hien felt very uneasy. A wave of anger surged, making her want to retort immediately. She thought she could explain. She could refute. She could clarify, because she had no ill intentions. But then, right at that moment, she paused. She asked herself why she had to speak up right now. Was she sure she understood everything clearly? And if she spoke while angry, would those words be wise or just make things worse? She chose silence, not because she was afraid, but because she wanted to observe herself first. For the next few days, she didn't actively approach Ms. Cook, but she maintained a normal demeanor, not avoiding her, not showing any discomfort. She simply remained silent and breathed steadily whenever negative emotions arose. In the evening, she would sit still for a while, observing the feelings swirling within her heart. She realized that the hurt didn't just come from others' words, but also from her own sensitivity. She saw that a part of her mind wanted to be recognized, wanted to be understood, and longed for others to treat her more gently. But at the same time, she also saw that if she got angry and reacted immediately, she would be nurturing that ego, letting it drag her into suffering. And then something unexpected happened. About a week later, Ms. Cook herself sought out Miss Hien to apologize. Ms. Cook said she had probably misunderstood. From afar, seeing Miss Hien's quiet nature, I thought she was cold, but I didn't realize she just wanted to work peacefully. Seeing that she didn't react, didn't say anything, Ms. Cook had time to reconsider and realized she had misjudged. So, just a gentle apology was enough to resolve all misunderstandings. Ms. Hien then just smiled and thanked her, without reproach, without recounting details, without condemnation. Because in her heart, she was already at peace. The anger had passed, the resentment had settled, the ego had softened. And she understood that silence was not for enduring, but for keeping the mind from creating new karma. When we don't speak in anger, we have already blocked half of the bad karma. After that incident, Miss Hien deeply grasped the Buddha's teaching. One who conquers oneself is the greatest conqueror. She realized that silence is not losing one's voice, but finding one's true inner voice. When we don't rush to react, we hear what our heart truly wants to say. Sometimes that heart simply wants peace. Sometimes it wants compassion. Sometimes it's very tired and just wants to be loved. Yet the ego pushes us into anger and delusion, forcing us to win, forcing us to speak up to prove ourselves. Silence is how we stop letting the ego lead us. Silence helps us see the mind clearly. Guarding the mind helps us guard blessings. For when the mind is at peace, without anger, without uttering harmful words, blessings are already present at that very moment. Blessings are not something grand in the future. Blessings are the seeds of goodness blooming in every moment. We know how to be calm, how to love, how to listen to ourselves. Silence is the greatest seed of goodness, because it gives us the opportunity to look back at ourselves before we create karma. If the listener is experiencing mental suffering due to someone's words, due to gossip in this life, please take a deep, slow breath. Don't rush to react. Don't try to prove yourself right. Let your mind have time to return to a state of stillness. Perhaps for a few hours, you will still feel angry. Perhaps for a few days, you will still feel hurt. But if you persistently maintain silence and observe your emotions with mindfulness and compassion, then at some point you will realize that the suffering is no longer as heavy as before. You will understand that the person who spoke those hurtful words is also suffering in their own way. And naturally, you will feel relieved. You will feel a desire to forgive. You will feel your heart lighten, not because you won over them, but because you knew how to let go. I gently send you a reminder. A peaceful mind is the greatest blessing a person can possess. Money can be lost, relationships can change, but a peaceful mind is the key that opens all doors to peace. And sometimes, just one moment of timely silence helps us keep that key. Remember that life is very short. Don't waste time arguing. Don't waste energy striving to win. Use that time to breathe. Use that heart to love. And use that silence as a soft armor to protect your mind. Because when the mind is at peace, blessings have already arrived. There are times when we feel that speaking is almost instinctive. Insulted, we want to retort. Misunderstood, we immediately want to explain. Seeing others angry, we also instinctively get angry. Even in normal conversations, sometimes we speak too quickly, too much, and only when we pause do we suddenly feel restless. Who among us has never wished to go back in time to retract a word accidentally uttered? Who has never regretted saying something when their mind was agitated? The more mature we become, the more clearly we understand that what people regret is not just what they did, but also the words they shouldn't have said. Sometimes, just one word can fracture a relationship. Sometimes, just a small reaction can make our mind restless for many days. Therefore, learning to be silent at the right time is a very great form of wisdom, a kind of blessing whose value only those who are mindful enough can see. In daily life, we encounter countless situations that make our hearts waver. A careless word hurts us. A reproach makes us feel sensitive. A misunderstanding leaves us devastated. We often think that to solve a problem, we must speak immediately, refute, and explain ourselves. But what few realize is that words are not always the way out. Sometimes it is precisely silence that pulls us out of the quicksand of emotions. Silence is not out of weakness, but because we don't want to fuel anger. Silence is not because we are wrong, but because we are not sure if what we say at that moment will be right. Silence is not because we give up, but because we believe that everything has its time. And in truth, there have been many times when silence has saved us from creating karma. Perhaps it's time for each of us to ask ourselves when we should be silent. Is it when we are insulted? Is it when others are angry? Is it when our own mind is very agitated? Or when the truth is still too vague? When things are unclear? At such times, if we don't stop, our words will not be the voice of mindfulness, but the voice of anger. And if we let anger lead the way, it will be difficult to keep our blessings. In Buddhist teachings, all karma arises from the mind. When the mind arises, karma arises. When the mind ceases, karma also ceases. When we are not sure that we are in a state of clarity, silence is the best way to avoid sowing more bad seeds. Others may misunderstand us, But as long as we maintain a calm mind, cause and effect will speak justly for us. People often fear being judged wrongly, but few understand that true justice lies not in worldly tongues, but in the law of cause and effect. Sometimes we talk ourselves hoarse, and no one believes us. Sometimes we remain silent for a few days, and then the truth naturally reveals itself. The Buddha taught that when anger flares up, a truly intelligent person is not one who is skilled in argument, but one who can stop. Every time the mind arises with the intention to refute, we should practice observing our emotions instead of forcing ourselves to speak up. Observing emotions is a way of turning inward to find the natural peace that already exists. When we realize that anger wants to control us, we have seen its true nature. And when we clearly see its true nature, we will no longer let it control us. A word held back is a wholesome word, is not just a common moral reminder, but a very profound spiritual wisdom. It teaches us that a moment of patience can save a lifetime of peace. There is a true story I want to recount, like a small lamp illuminating us when we are lost in our own emotions. It is the story of Mr. Long, an ordinary office worker, like many others. In an important meeting, he was unjustly scolded by his boss, who thought he had made a mistake in a report. In front of many colleagues, he was severely reprimanded, making everyone think he had committed a serious error. His heart burned with anger. In his mind, a series of rebuttals wanted to burst out. He wanted to explain, to clarify, to prove that he was not wrong at all. But in that moment, he suddenly remembered his mother's advice, which she had often repeated since his childhood. When you're angry, the more you talk, the worse things get. He took a deep breath, and surpassing all the surging emotions, he chose silence. That moment was not easy. It was not resignation, but a great act of courage with himself. He knew that if he spoke then, his words would carry the fire of anger, and anger always burns down all kindness. He was silent, not because he was wrong, but because he was not sure he was thinking clearly, and he wanted to maintain his composure. In front of everyone, he only said that he would recheck the report very carefully and accepted feedback from his boss. A few days later, when the technical department rechecked the system, they discovered that the error was not in his report, but stemmed from a glitch in the internal data. Upon learning this, Mr. Long's boss personally met him and apologized. The boss said that day he had been too quick to anger and had wrongly accused him. Mr. Long just smiled gently and replied, "I understand, because everyone gets stressed sometimes, and I won't hold a grudge over one wrongful accusation." Perhaps that very silence preserved his respect. Perhaps, thanks to that silence, his self-esteem was not wounded. And perhaps, thanks to that silence, he did not create any further karma of offensive words or negative reactions. After that story, Mr. Long sat silently on a windy afternoon. He suddenly understood something. Sometimes silence is the greatest protection for oneself. Speaking up is not always strength, but sometimes accepting silence is true strength. When we hear that story, we might see ourselves in it. There are moments when our hearts also want to lash out. We want to shout loudly that we are not wrong. We once wanted to resist to save our own pride. But if we had spoken that day, would the situation have been resolved Or would it have gotten worse? If we had been silent that day, would the other person have realized they were hasty? If these questions are answered with deep contemplation, we will see that timely silence is mindfulness arising within us. Just as the Buddha taught, when the mind is agitated, do not act. When the mind is not clear, do not say anything. When the mind is not gentle, breathe first. Buddhist teachings don't teach us to be silent out of fear, but to be silent to uphold precepts. Here, precept means guarding speech karma. Speech karma is created very quickly and also causes the most harm. People may forget what we do, but it's very hard for them to forget what we say. Words, once uttered, cannot be taken back. So guarding our words is guarding our blessings. Many people ruin a long-lasting relationship over a minute of anger. Many others carry lifelong regret because of harsh words. In anger, if we speak, we help anger spread. But if we are silent, we stop a part of bad karma right when it arises in the mind. One who lives with mindfulness will realize that there are times when words cannot help us, and it is precisely silence that is the true medicine. When others are angry, all advice becomes meaningless, because the door of their mind is closed. When we are not sure we are right, words easily become a wind that blows away the truth. When our mind is agitated, words will often just be an emotional reaction, not mindfulness. When things are unclear, talking a lot won't find the truth either. Some questions need time to answer themselves. If you are going through a period where words become a burden, know that you are not alone. On this path, many people are also learning to be silent. Many people are also learning to breathe, and many people are also learning to turn inward. We come to life not to become skilled debaters, but to become people who know how to live each moment fully in peace. Sometimes we win an argument, but lose ourselves. Sometimes we win the point, but lose our sense of peace. So, does that win or loss still have meaning? From now on, if you encounter an insult, please temporarily be silent. If others are angry, please temporarily be silent. If you are not sure you are right, please temporarily be silent. If your mind is agitated, please temporarily be silent. If the truth is unclear, please temporarily be silent. Because a word held back is not weakness, but a wholesome word appearing. Each time you are silent at the right moment, you give your mind a peaceful plot of land. That land will nourish you, heal you, and help you become a more light-hearted person amidst life's many turbulences. When we know how to be silent at the right time, it's also when we know how to love ourselves deeply. Silence is not avoidance or indifference, but knowing when to step back to see more clearly. Knowing when to stop to feel the true voice from our heart, and knowing that inner peace is the most precious thing. There will come a day when you understand that what needs to be protected most is not your ego, but the peace of your inner self. Because when the mind is at peace, everything else will become lighter. Sometimes silence is golden, but there are also times when just one timely word can save a person's entire life. The ancients often said, words spoken are like water spilled. They cannot be taken back, cannot be corrected. Therefore, speaking less is wisdom. Knowing how to be silent is practice. But knowing when to speak is truly having inner strength, having self-compassion. A person who practices is not one who says nothing, but one who knows how to speak when necessary. How to speak just enough, and most importantly, how to speak so that one's words touch someone's heart without hurting them. Speak to help others, not to prove oneself right. Speak to spread goodness, not to push others into suffering. Speak with compassion, not with ego. There are times in life when we clearly see that words can be a connecting thread, but they can also become a knife cutting into the spirit of someone in pain. When we are angry, words become arrows. When we are deluded, words become fire. When we cling to the ego, words transform into an invisible weapon, making the person opposite feel attacked. But when our mind is at peace, words become a cool stream, helping the other person feel lighter. We often speak a lot when our mind is restless, but rarely choose to be silent to observe what energy the words we are about to speak carry. Because we don't stop, suffering continues to follow suffering. Speaking without knowing what we are saying, speaking without feeling if our words are creating karma, that is the cause of our added suffering. One who does not practice speaks to vent emotions. One who practices is silent to transform emotions first, then speaks. We don't necessarily have to be silent all our lives. There are times when we need to speak to uphold what is right. There are times when we need to speak to uplift a soul. There are times when we need to speak to save a person in despair. There are times when we need to speak to illuminate a path. There are times when we need to speak to help others recognize their own worth. At those times, words are no longer speech karma, but become a means to save lives. In life, everyone faces challenges. Some endure silently. Some complain. Some choose silence, but their hearts are full of storms. Some want to speak, but don't know how to speak correctly. Afraid of others' misunderstanding, afraid of hurting loved ones. So, silence in suffering is not always good. We must learn to observe our mind. When the mind is still angry, we should be silent. When the mind is still clinging, we should be silent. But when the mind has settled, when the heart is at peace, when we know clearly that what we say will benefit others, then it is time to speak. The Buddha taught 5 principles of right speech. Speak truthfully. Speak gently. Speak words that bring peace. Speak at the right time. And speak with a kind heart. These 5 principles are like 5 guiding lamps when we are unsure whether to speak or remain silent. People often talk a lot, but rarely speak rightly. We speak to win. We speak to protect our ego. We speak to make others think we are intelligent. But such words only widen the gap between us and others. Happiness does not come naturally, nor do blessings. Words are the cause that creates karma, and karma will bear fruit. So speaking wrongly leads to suffering, but speaking rightly, speaking with a kind heart, speaking at the right time, can sometimes save a person's life. There was a teacher named Min. She wasn't famous. Nothing about her made people particularly notice her, but she had a truly warm heart. Ms. Min taught at a small village school, with more poor students than elsewhere. One day, she saw a girl named 𝗕𝗂 sitting in a corner of the schoolyard, her face gaunt, her eyes red-rimmed. 𝗕𝗂 was only 15, but her shoulders seemed to carry the weariness of an adult's life. Ms. Min approached and asked how she was, but 𝗕𝗂 just bowed her head. Ms. Min patiently sat there for a long time, and finally 𝗕𝗂 spoke softly, her voice trembling with tears. "I'm going to quit school, to work as a laborer. My family is too poor. My mother is sick. My father left. My older brother works far away, but doesn't send money home. I'm the youngest, and I feel useless, so I want to quit school. I said that dreams have to be put aside, because if you're hungry, you still have to live." Hearing that, Ms. Min felt something knot in her heart. If she had remained silent then, 𝗕𝗂 might have actually dropped out of school. If she had spoken hastily then, 𝗕𝗂 might have felt judged. But she didn't remain silent. She chose to speak. And she spoke with her whole heart. She didn't scold. She didn't blame. She didn't lecture with theories. She just said one gentle sentence. "If you quit school today, you'll suffer your whole life. I believe you are stronger than the fear in front of you." The simple words, yet they were like a cool stream pouring into 𝗕𝗂's soul at that moment. It wasn't a moral lesson, but a wake-up call to the strength slumbering in the heart of a young girl. The words weren't many. The attitude wasn't stern, but the speaker's heart lifted the listener's heart. 𝗕𝗂 sat silently, and after a long time, looked up at her teacher. After that, she didn't quit school. 10 years later, she became successful. On her visit back to the school, 𝗕𝗂 tearfully recalled the words from that year. 𝗕𝗂 said, if Miss Min had been silent then, perhaps her life would have taken a different path. So sometimes, a timely word can guide a soul through a storm. Sometimes, just a gentle word can bring a lifetime of peace. We can clearly see that silence, or speaking up, is not the issue. The main thing is where our mind is. If we speak to save someone, to help someone, to sow a good seed, then those are words worth speaking. If we speak to win, to prove, to vent angry emotions, then silence is precious. Practice sitting still, listening to your breath. Practice looking into your heart when you want to speak. Ask if these words come from a kind heart or from ego. Ask if what you are about to say will make the other person happier. If the answer is unclear, then be silent. If the answer is yes, then speak, but speak with peace. Speak truthfully, which doesn't mean speaking bluntly and harshly to someone's face. The truth can be spoken with compassion. Speaking gently doesn't mean flattering, but speaking in a way that doesn't hurt the listener. Speaking words that bring peace is not always easy, because one must practice to achieve this. Speaking at the right time means knowing that timing is also a very important factor. Some words are true, but spoken at the wrong time still cause pain. And speaking with a kind heart means having no ulterior motives, no personal gain. The words of a practitioner are like a lotus flower, growing from mud, but not tainted by the mud. Therefore, for words to be free of karma, the mind must first be pure. We really need to practice mindfulness with every word we speak, because words are directly connected to the mind's intention. Speech karma doesn't just happen. It comes from the mind, If the mind is greedy, it speaks deceitful words. If the mind is angry, it speaks harsh words. If the mind is deluded, it speaks words that lead others astray. Conversely, if the mind is kind, words are like sunlight, warming those who are cold. If the mind is clear, words are like a lamp, helping those walking in darkness see their way clearly. A true practitioner is not one who never speaks. A true practitioner is one who can observe their inner self before opening their mouth. Every word can create blessings, or it can create karma. When the mind is trained, words become a gift. When the mind is not yet trained, words can become a burden. A peaceful family also needs peaceful language. A child growing up also needs loving words. A suffering person also needs words of encouragement. So, the important thing is not silence or speaking up. The most important thing is what state of mind we are in before we speak. If you feel reproach, pain, discomfort in your heart, then be silent first. Take a deep breath. Look into your mind. Then, when your mind is at peace, speak with kind eyes. Speak with an open heart. Speak in a way that makes the other person feel that you care about them, not that you are trying to win against them. In this way, words will resolve suffering. Sometimes, just one timely, beneficial, and heartfelt sentence is enough to change an entire life. Words are invisible, but their power is unseen and boundless. A wholesome word can sprout blessings. A malicious word can create negative karma. We choose how to speak so that our lives are light and our minds are at peace. If we know how to speak with compassion, how to step back to observe the mind before speaking, how to speak what is truly good, how to speak to help others, then blessings will come like a cool stream flowing into life. And who knows, one day, just one word from you might save a life. In family life, there are times when we realize that suffering doesn't come from big issues, but from very small words. Just a sharp retort is enough to make a meal feel heavy. Just a careless word of blame can turn a loved one into a stranger. And then, as each day passes, such wounds silently accumulate in the heart, making home no longer a place to return to, but like a place we have to endure. People often think that happiness in a family comes from how we treat each other. But few realize that happiness also lies in how we are silent with each other when necessary. There are things that don't need to be said for people to feel love. There are times when we don't speak, yet we know the other person truly cares. But to achieve that, we need to learn how to be silent at the right time, with the right intention, in the right way. In a family, everyone wants to be loved and listened to. But precisely because we want to be listened to too much, we forget that others also need healing from silence. When we come home exhausted, we want to complain. When we face unhappiness, we want someone to understand us. When we are angry, we want someone to listen to us. But the more we want to speak, the more we want others to understand us. We are more likely to hurt our loved ones if our minds are not at peace. Perhaps each of us has experienced a family meal where no one spoke a word to another. The silence, then, was not peace, but a rupture. But there are also times when we choose silence not out of anger, but out of love. When we know that a loved one is tired, instead of saying more, we are silent to give them space to breathe. That silence is not cold, but full of deep love. In a family, suffering often begins with things we consider small. A thoughtless word, a groundless accusation, an anger that wasn't stopped in time. We often speak impulsively when emotions surge like waves. Anger is like fire. Just a small spark can burn down an entire forest. Thoughtless words can also burn down an entire home. We don't intentionally hurt, but because we want to speak to lighten our own hearts, we end up burdening our loved ones more. And so, conflict arises. Then we make excuses, saying we just wanted to speak the truth. We just wanted the family to be better. But if the truth we speak does not come from a loving heart, even if it is true, it can still create a wound. People often believe that speaking out solves problems, but sometimes speaking out with an agitated mind only sows more adverse winds. In contrast, the Buddha taught that all roots of speech karma stem from an unawakened mind. Anger causes us to utter hurtful words. Greed makes us want others to follow us. Delusion makes us fail to realize that we ourselves are causing suffering. If we don't clearly see our mind, silence is the best way to avoid creating more bad karma. Because a word once uttered cannot be taken back. Words have flown away like grains of rice scattered by the wind. We cannot gather them back intact. In the sutras, the Buddha once reminded that silence is sometimes a form of wisdom. Silence to observe one's inner self. Silence to feel the pain of loved ones. Silence to see that what the other person is expressing may not necessarily be their true nature. Perhaps they are tired. Perhaps they are sad. Perhaps they have just gone through a long day full of pressure. And if at that moment we rush to say what we believe is right, it might push the other person into feeling judged. Therefore, the Buddha taught that to keep a family peaceful, one must use mindfulness to guard speech karma. Speaking or being silent are equally important. But the most important thing is where the mind is before we speak. Let's try to look at our family and see where love often comes from. Sometimes we remember hugs, times we held hands, gentle silences meant only to protect us from an emotional storm. We rarely remember words of right or wrong, but easily remember moments when someone chose silence so we could calm down. Silence is not abandonment. Silence is not indifference. Silence can be the gentlest comfort for someone who is tired. The story of Mrs. 𝗕𝗂𝗃 and her hot-tempered son is perhaps similar to many other stories in the homes we call family. Mrs. 𝗕𝗂𝗃 lived with her son, 𝗬𝗏. 𝗬𝗏 worked all day. The dust and pressure of the road weighed on his shoulders, making him lose his gentleness every time he returned home. Before the rice had even cooled, he sighed. Before he could eat, he complained of tiredness. Whenever his mother asked him anything, 𝗬𝗏 would often snap, "I'm tired, don't ask anymore." At first, she was secretly sad. After a few times, she chose silence, knowing her son was just tired, not a bad person. But then one day, she carelessly cooked a dish that wasn't to his liking. 𝗬𝗏 lost his temper and raised his voice in the middle of dinner, making the atmosphere heavy. Her eyes reddened slightly, but she quietly cleared the dishes and chopsticks and reheated the food herself. Everything was so silent that you could clearly hear the spoon gently scraping the side of the pot. Tuan didn't say anything, but remorse began to creep into his heart like a cold wind. At that moment, she didn't scold him, nor did she show hurt. She just walked over, placed a hand on his shoulder, and told him to eat before the food got cold. Simple words, without blame, without anger, without urging. That gentle touch was not meant to subdue, nor to explain. It was simply a gesture of compassion. Tuan sat silently, feeling as if someone had just pulled back the curtain, covering his mind. Not long after, he burst into tears. For the first time in many years, he apologized to his mother. And for the first time, he realized that some silences are not meant to hide sadness, but to preserve love. Perhaps all of us have been Tuan at some point in our lives. When tired, we don't want anyone to ask. When sad, we don't want anyone to advise. We just want everything to pass quickly. But what lightens our heart is not right or wrong words, but the feeling of being forgiven. Loved ones can choose to react, but when they choose silence to keep us feeling safe, that is true love. In a family, such silence is a form of mindfulness and compassion. Breakdowns in a family never begin with big things. They begin with small dust particles. Then, over time, these dust particles grow and become distance. A harsh word can make an elderly person feel worthless. A careless word of blame can make a child feel they are never good enough. A moment of anger can make a spouse feel lonely, even when standing in their own home. Therefore, guarding speech karma in the family is one of the most fundamental practices. Practice is not just in the temple. Practice is where one lives. Practice is in every word and reaction. Whenever something undesirable happens. When we know how to be silent at the right time, we are creating a space for emotions to settle. That space is where wisdom sprouts. If we rush to respond, the ego will take over. But when we choose to step back, the ego will lose its power. And at that moment, a deep understanding of our loved one's suffering will guide us. We realize that an irritable person is not bad, but weak. A quarrelsome person is not evil, but doesn't know how to express the pain in their heart. And if we are peaceful enough not to resist, it is very possible that we will save the other person from creating bad karma. A mindful person never argues to win. Because winning in a family brings no joy. Winning an argument, but losing love, what's the point? A family is not a place to prove who is right or wrong, but a place to return to feel at peace. Therefore, timely silence is part of the wisdom of living together. It is not passivity, it is self-discipline. Silent to understand, silent to observe, silent to wait for the right moment. Speak only when the heart is at peace. Then words will never hurt anyone. If you want your family to last, practice silence about unimportant things. Choose silence when angry. Choose silence when you return home from work, still exhausted. Choose silence when an elderly person accidentally does something wrong. Choose silence when a child doesn't yet have the words to explain why. And instead of speaking for ego, be silent for love. Breathe steadily and ask if what you want to say will create happiness for the listener. If not, wait. If so, Then speak with a gentle voice, with kind eyes, with compassion. We cannot avoid disagreements, but we can reduce many consequences simply by being silent at the right time. In a family, silence is not weakness, but the strength of one who practices guarding their mind. For lasting happiness does not come from speaking a lot, but from knowing when to speak less. Like Mrs. Nam in that story, she did not retort when her son spoke harshly to her, but that silence healed her son's heart. Because compassion is always stronger than ego, understanding is always deeper than all arguments, and mindfulness always stands above all, right and wrong. For a family to be peaceful, everyone needs to learn to cultivate their breath. Cultivate in how they see loved ones. Cultivate in how they react to undesirable things. Cultivate in how they are silent, because silence can also be a prayer for those we love. Every time we know how to be silent, to maintain peace for our family, we are creating blessings. In every such moment, we are not only saving words that could cause hurt, but sometimes we are also saving a heavy soul that we love most. A lasting family is not built by speaking a lot, but by knowing when to be silent. When we know how to be silent at the right time, we are sowing seeds of peace in the fertile ground of our own soul and of those we love. And who knows, just by one act of silence, we might preserve a family intact. There are days when we go to work and our hearts feel more tired than when we have to run under the midday sun or stay up until midnight to complete a task. That tiredness doesn't just come from sales pressure or piling tasks on the desk. What exhausts people the most are the gossip, the back and forth words, the unintentional or intentional remarks that people exchange in the work environment. One can sit in a cool, air-conditioned office, but just one unkind word is enough to make the entire day feel heavy. People at work sometimes suffer not because of the job, but because of other people. And in such crowded places, our words become the easiest thing to get us into trouble. Many people think that at work, you have to speak forcefully. You have to express yourself. You have to show that you are better, more knowledgeable. But the older we get, the more we realize that those who talk a lot are not the strong ones. Truly strong people observe carefully, understand deeply, and choose to be silent at the right time. Because when we speak less, we invite less trouble. When we speak less, our heart settles down. When we don't react hastily, wisdom naturally emerges. And then life brings us more peace and stability. Sometimes the suffering in the workplace doesn't start from big things, but from each person's hard-to-break habits. People often want to interfere in others' conversations because they fear being left out. They want to offer advice to make others see that they are also knowledgeable. They want to express their opinions to feel that they have weight. But very often, words are precisely what drag us into tangled situations we don't foresee. Someone speaks ill of another, and we unintentionally nod along. Someone tells a story whose truth is unclear, and we chime in with a few words. These words pass quickly, but the consequences can sometimes take months to resolve. Human psychology naturally likes attention. We talk a lot because we are afraid that silence will make us forgotten. We fear that if we don't express our opinions, others will think we are incompetent. We fear that if we don't speak, we will lose some advantage. But it is precisely that ego wanting to express itself that entangles us in unnecessary arguments, unwanted, covert competitions, and troubles that could have been avoided by simply speaking less. When we look deeply into the reasons that make us tired at work, we will find that most of it comes from words. Speaking wrongly hurts others. Speaking rightly when not necessary also causes trouble. Speaking to prove oneself better than someone else pushes oneself into envy. Speaking with the majority, without considering whether it is wholesome, inadvertently creates karma. And speech karma doesn't wait until the next life to bear fruit. It bears fruit right in this life, in the form of misunderstandings, anger, loss of trust, damaged reputation, and even closed opportunities. The Buddha taught that wind cannot reach high mountains. One who keeps their speech karma pure is like that mountain. Worldly gossip, rights, and wrongs cannot easily shake them. In the sutras, there is a passage that says words must be judged by 3 things. First, is the word true? Second, is the word beneficial? Third, does the word bring peace to the listener? If it lacks one of these 3, it is best to remain silent. Silence is not weakness, but the strength of one who has self-control. One who understands the Dharma does not argue to win, but lets the peace in their heart speak for everything. We will understand this more clearly when we look at very small stories in life. There was a woman named Ms. Lan who worked in a small office. Everyone in the office was used to talking about colleagues' private matters. Some complained about one person. Some were dissatisfied with another. Every morning or every lunch break, these conversations buzzed throughout the room. The atmosphere was noisy, but not genuinely warm. Amidst the half-hearted laughter and sharp jokes, Miss Lan chose a different way of living. She was silent. It wasn't that she didn't hear, nor that she didn't understand what was happening. She simply chose not to respond. She didn't criticize anyone, nor did she agree. She just smiled lightly and continued her work. Many wondered why she was so closed off. But actually, she wasn't closed off. She was simply mature enough to know that gossip doesn't bring anything good. She knew that words once uttered never return. A word spoken can be as light as wind, but as heavy as a stone in the heart of the person being talked about. Then, one day, a crucial piece of information about a new project was leaked in the office. This news not only caused damage to the work, but also created confusion throughout the team. Everyone suspected each other. People looked at each other with wary eyes. Some swore they were not involved. Some blamed each other. And the atmosphere was so tense that every word spoken seemed to contain a layer of thorns. Amidst this chaos, there was only one person everyone trusted absolutely, and that was Ms. Lan. Because never in many years of working had she participated in any gossip. Never had she let slip a word that hurt others, nor had she ever become the center of any gossip. Her very silence became a shield protecting her value in the eyes of her colleagues. People didn't need to investigate much. They just needed to remember how she lived, how she spoke, how she guarded even the smallest words, and they knew she was never the one to cause trouble. And that trust was not something she deliberately created. It was naturally gained from her daily attitude to life. A few weeks later, the company needed to choose a new team leader. Although many had good work performance, the management still chose Ms. Lan, not because she spoke well or knew how to attract attention, but because she was calm enough, discreet enough, mature enough to handle sensitive issues without hurting anyone. People believed that a person who knows how to guard their mouth will know how to guard their reputation and guard the team. Ms. Lan's story is clear proof that in life and society, talking a lot doesn't necessarily earn respect, and showing off doesn't necessarily make you seen. Some people gain more trust by speaking less, earn more respect by being silent, and are given more opportunities by being humble. Her path to success was not built on promises or colorful words. It was built on timely silence, on keen observation, on putting others' peace of mind above her own need for self-expression. From that story, we clearly see that in work and society, silence is not avoidance. Silence is the wisdom of one who sees through but does not judge. Silence is the beauty of one who understands but does not boast. Silence is the maturity of one who knows that words can solve problems, but can also make them more complicated. Truly mature people don't always need to explain everything. They just need to keep their minds pure and let their actions prove their worth. When we speak less, our minds will lighten. When we choose not to participate in gossip, our hearts will not be drawn into negative energy. When we observe more, we understand others more clearly and also understand ourselves more clearly. This makes us more stable in all situations. When we don't rush to react, we won't create unnecessary hurt. And when we speak less, we also expose fewer of our own weaknesses. Because it's only when we talk a lot that we unintentionally reveal what we don't want others to know. Silence is a way of guarding oneself. At work, silence also helps us focus on truly important tasks. We don't get caught up in side conversations. We don't waste time on comparisons, rivalries, or sarcastic remarks that don't bring anything beneficial. We dedicate our energy to more valuable things. When we focus, our work improves. When our work improves, our hearts feel more confident. When we are confident, we no longer need to use words to assert ourselves. The Buddha once taught that to keep one's body and mind pure, one must first guard one's speech karma. Speech is the first gateway that agitates the mind. When we control our words, we control a very large part of karma. One who knows how to speak wholesome words will have blessings. One who knows how to be silent at the right time will avoid misfortune. And one who knows how to filter every word they want to say will build trust in the hearts of others. So, what should we do to live silently in a profound way without being silent out of fear? First, we need to learn to recognize the moment we are about to say something just to express our ego. As soon as we realize this, we take a light breath and let that thought dissolve in our mind. Then we observe whether what we are about to say is truly necessary. If not necessary, let silence answer for us. 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗱𝗵𝘀 khi nghe sâu, ta không nghe để phản bác, không nghe để chen vào, không nghe để tìm lỗi của người khác. We listen to understand, and when we understand, we realize that speaking out is sometimes unnecessary. Knowledgeable silence has far more healing power than hasty words. We can also practice speaking more slowly. When we speak slowly, our mind also slows down and is no longer caught up in anger or haste. Every word spoken at that moment will carry peaceful energy, harming no one. Speaking little, speaking slowly, and speaking with compassion is a way to guard ourselves from unnecessary troubles. When working, we should also know what to share and what to keep to ourselves. Not everyone wants the best for us. Not everyone understands what we consider important. If we talk too much about private matters, we will unintentionally give others an opportunity to judge or use it against us. Keeping a part of silence is keeping our freedom. Workdays will become lighter when we know what to keep in our hearts and what to let go of, so that gossip cannot touch us. One who knows how to keep their heart pure, competition cannot affect them, does not let the ego lead, and negative words cannot muddy one who knows how to stand still in silence. I want to tell the listener that silence is not to escape life, but to understand life. Speaking less is not to make others fear us, but to make us fear unnecessary things less. When we live peacefully through our words, blessings will naturally come to us. Because blessings do not come from great things. Blessings come from small choices in life, including how we open our mouths, at work or in the larger society. If you know how to speak less, you are opening a bright path for yourself. Others may be more talented than you, more agile than you, more articulate than you. But if you know how to be silent at the right time, you will always have a firmer footing than many others. Because silence makes others feel safe when they are with you. And when you make others feel safe, you will always be the chosen one. I only ask you to remember one simple thing. Life will become much easier to breathe if every day you take a few seconds to ask yourself if the words you are about to say are truly necessary. If not, return them to stillness. In that stillness, your mind will be more at peace. And when your mind is at peace, you will see life as light as a cloud. There are days in life when we suddenly realize that what makes us tired is not the piling up of tasks or the pressure of racing against time. What often exhausts us is just a careless remark from someone, a harsh word that takes us an entire afternoon to regain our composure, or a small annoyance someone brings that makes our heart agitated without ceasing. Words can be light as wind, but also heavy as stone. They can lift others up, but also plunge them into a deep abyss. And then we ask ourselves why someone's words hurt us so much, and why sometimes we so easily hurt others. Just by uttering a few words, we begin to understand that words are something both fragile and powerful, easily creating blessings and easily creating karma in life. Everyone, at some point, gets angry and says things they don't mean. Everyone has moments of hastily judging someone without knowing that behind their forced smile might be a bleeding heart. Everyone has at least once misunderstood someone and confidently believed they were right, only to realize much later how impulsive they were in their emotions. Our suffering sometimes comes not from external circumstances, but from a mind that has not settled, a mouth that has not been guarded, and a lack of patience to look deeply into the suffering of others. People often react with words before truly observing. We don't wait a few minutes to fully understand the story. We don't take a step back to see the whole picture. The ego makes us want to be right, want our opinion to be heard first. Familiar psychology makes us believe that only by speaking out can emotions be released. But the more we speak when the mind is not clear, the more those words lack compassion, and the more they plunge both ourselves and those around us into trouble. If we observe carefully, we will see that most of the suffering in human relationships stems from misunderstanding each other, yet talking too much. When we haven't seen the pain of others, we easily blame. When we haven't understood the circumstances of the person opposite us, we easily get angry. When we haven't looked deeply into a person's heart, we easily say words that hurt others. But when we begin to keep silent for a bit, when we stop reacting, we have an internal space to look deeply, to see that somewhere behind someone's unpleasant actions might be an unhealed wound. The Buddha once taught that every human being experiences suffering and seeks to escape suffering, whether through right or wrong methods. When we look at others with compassionate eyes, we will understand that no one naturally becomes irritable. No one naturally becomes unpleasant. Everyone has their own story, sometimes a hidden pain that everyone wants to conceal. When we know to settle down instead of judging, we will see the deepest part within them. And once we see that, words of blame suddenly become unnecessary. From then on, love begins to blossom. Sometimes, just 1 minute of silence can change our entire perception of a person. A deep breath can help us escape a fit of anger. One less word can help us not hurt someone again. We often think that a gentle person is someone who speaks softly. But in reality, a gentle person is one who speaks little, because a person who speaks little will have enough time to observe, to understand, and to love. Compassion does not blossom from words. Compassion blossoms in the stillness of the soul. To have compassion, we must first learn to guard our mouth. There is a story about Mr. Ħ'Hy that I want to tell. Mr. Ħ'Hy was a kind-hearted man, hard-working, and like many others, he simply wished for each day to pass peacefully. But one thing greatly bothered him for a long time: his neighbor, Mr. Locke. Mr. Locke was a loud, boisterous man, always speaking loudly from morning till night. On days when Mr. Ħ'Hy wanted to rest after work, just hearing Mr. Locke's loud voice in the yard would fill his heart with annoyance. His wife told him not to mind, but he remained irritated because he loved quiet. Many times he intended to go over and talk, to ask Mr. Locke to reduce the noise. He thought that just speaking directly once would solve it. But everything changed one afternoon. It was raining lightly that day, and Mr. Ħ'Hy was about to close his window when he heard 2 neighbors talking outside the gate. They said that Mr. Locke's wife had passed away not long ago. Mr. Locke, due to immense grief, had fallen into depression. Every day, he had to manage alone in an empty house, these familiar corners where his wife's laughter once resonated were now silent. He became easily irritable, easily loud. Not because he was annoyed with anyone, but because his own pain was too great. The neighbor added that Mr. Locke had not eaten properly for many days, cried alone until his voice was hoarse, and then fell into helplessness and despair. Hearing that, Mr. Ħ'Hy was deeply moved. He felt something drop in his heart. The discomfort he had accumulated for so long suddenly became strangely small. He realized he had never understood Mr. Locke, never tried to look deeply into that irritation to see what was behind it. He only heard the noise, but didn't see the emptiness tormenting the man. He only felt his own discomfort, but forgot that everyone has wounds that are not easy to express. From that day on, Mr. Hai was no longer annoyed. Whenever he heard Mr. Locke's shouting, he no longer reacted as before. A feeling of compassion, more than anger, suddenly arose in his heart. He started to pay attention to what Mr. Locke needed, if he was okay. One day, he saw Mr. Locke standing on the porch with a tired expression, and he gently went over to ask how he was. Mr. Locke was a bit surprised at first, but then his eyes softened. Mr. Hai, from an ordinary neighbor, suddenly became someone Mr. Locke could share a little with, and without needing flowery words, just by not speaking harshly, just by being present with kindness, Mr. Hai helped him more than he imagined. That story, seemingly simple, contains a profound lesson. When we understand the suffering of others, we can no longer be angry with them. When we touch someone's pain, our heart naturally softens. Speaking less is also allowing that understanding to grow. And when we understand, we know how to love. When we know how to love, we cannot speak harshly to anyone, not even once. People often say that to cultivate compassion, one must practice loving others. But for us, the first thing to be able to love is to know how to be silent. Because when we are silent, we open our eyes to look deeply into the person opposite us. When we speak less, we have time to truly see. Many times, we just need to observe a little to immediately understand why that person acts that way. Perhaps they are under immense pressure. Perhaps they are worried about a seriously ill loved one. Perhaps they are living in a marriage full of tears. Perhaps they have just been hurt by some words that no one knows about. Everyone is a unique world. Before we judge or get angry, let us step into that world for a moment with silence and listening. Our mind will then become broader. Narrow-mindedness will naturally fall away. Compassion will blossom like a seed meeting good rain. The Buddha once taught that no one shouts when their mind is at peace. No one causes trouble when their mind is full of peace. Every harsh word from a person carries a part of suffering behind it. When we understand this, we will blame them less and cause them less suffering with our words. A compassionate person is one who does not add burdens to the already tired hearts of others. A compassionate person speaks less so as not to unintentionally hurt those around them. In modern life, we are easily swept away by quick emotions, strong reactions, and hasty words. We hear bad news about someone and immediately assume it's true. We see someone behave in a way we don't like and immediately use it to judge them. We hear a hurtful sentence and immediately want to retort so as not to be underestimated. But if we calm down for a moment, we will realize that every hasty reaction carries a part of the untamed ego. The ego makes us think we must always be right. The ego makes us want others to listen to us. The ego makes us suffer just because of a word that we could have overlooked. We suffer not because of what others say. We suffer because we are not strong enough to be unmoved by those words. If we can keep silent in the face of a hurtful word, we are giving ourselves a gift. that gift is peace. When the mind is at peace, we are no longer drawn into whirlpools of anger. And from there, we open the door to compassion. One who speaks little easily sees deeply. One who speaks much easily misses the truth. One who knows how to be silent before speaking will maintain more lasting relationships. One who knows how to listen before judging will become a refuge for weary souls. Compassion is not something grand. Compassion begins with how we speak to others, with gentleness in every word, with the ability to control ourselves when we want to get angry, with speaking less unnecessary words. When our heart is at peace, our words naturally become kind. When our heart loves, our words naturally become gentle. When our heart sees the pain of others, our words naturally become healing. We cannot expect others to treat us gently if we do not first treat them gently. We cannot expect others to stop hurting us if we ourselves still use words to hurt them. We cannot expect a peaceful life if our mind always wants to react. Speaking less is how we tidy up our mind before we want to change someone else. When we speak less, we not only protect others, but also protect ourselves. There is a very good way to cultivate compassion. That is, whenever we want to say something that would make others sad, try to put ourselves in their shoes. We try to imagine how we would feel if someone said that to us. When we can do that, we have taken another step into understanding. And understanding always is the door to love. An understanding person cannot intentionally hurt others. In close relationships, speaking less is a way to maintain peace. In distant relationships, speaking less is a way to be thoughtful. In a work environment, speaking less is a way to maintain harmony. In life in general, speaking less is a way to cultivate compassion and sow blessings. Because blessings do not come from speaking or speaking well. Blessings come from speaking at the right time, in the right place, with the right intention. If every day we take a little time to observe those around us in silence, we will see that everyone carries a hidden story. Some are battling illness. Some are under great economic pressure. Some have lost loved ones. Some carry a long loneliness in their hearts, with no one to share it with. These things do not appear in their smiles or their eyes, but it still is there, silent and heavy. When we see that with eyes that know how to love, we will not be able to utter words that hurt them. A compassionate person doesn't need to do anything grand. A compassionate person just needs to speak little and look deeply, just needs not to add more pain to anyone's life, just needs to keep their heart at peace so as not to cause unease to others. Every time we are silent so as not to hurt a vulnerable person, we are sowing a seed of blessing in our heart. Every time we try to understand instead of blaming, we are opening the door of love. And every time we look at others with a light heart, we are freeing ourselves from unnecessary anxieties. I want to send the listener a gentle reminder. Let your heart settle down a bit before speaking. Let your gaze soften a bit before looking at others. Let your mind become a little softer before judging. Inner stillness is the most fertile ground for compassion to sprout. When you speak less, your life will suffer less. When your mind is calm, your heart will know how to love more. And when you know how to love, blessings will naturally find you, like water finds a river. Dear friend, as we sit together in a quiet evening like this, I want to invite you to look deeply into a very small thing that has a great impact on everyone's life: our own words. From morning till night, we speak more than we realize. We speak to loved ones, colleagues, friends, and sometimes we even speak to ourselves. But not every word brings joy. Some sentences warm hearts. Others make someone's entire day feel heavy. And sometimes, just one word uttered in anger is enough to sow seeds of suffering into the realm of cause and effect. Later, I met many people, and as I listened to their life stories, I realized that most suffering does not lie in circumstances. It lies in how we react, in the words we utter too quickly before the mind has had time to settle. Therefore, today, I want to gently walk with you through an important truth. When you speak less, your life will suffer less. When you keep your speech karma pure, blessings begin to be present in every breath. We often think suffering comes from lack of money, lack of love, lack of opportunities. But try to notice if many times you feel tired just because of a few words that make your heart sink. A careless word of blame makes us sad for an entire afternoon. A harsh word makes us lose sleep thinking about it. A derogatory remark can wound one's self-esteem forever. Similarly, there are words we think are just meant to lighten our hearts, but they hurt others. For several days, some people withdraw for months just because they heard an insult. Some people's marriages fracture because of a few harsh words from their spouse. Some children grow up with unhealed wounds because of derogatory words. Words can truly save a person or make them fall. But because speaking is too easy, we forget its power. We forget that speech karma is created the fastest and returns just as quickly. We forget that words are not lost, but they can diminish blessings. And we forget that once words are uttered, they can never be taken back. When I look deeply into the cause of suffering, I see three things that always revolve around us. First is haste. The more agitated the mind, the sharper the words. When we react before we even breathe, the words spoken usually don't carry wisdom. They only carry instinct and habit. Second is the ego, always wanting to be right, wanting to be superior, wanting not to lose. From that comes harsh words, words spoken out of spite, words to prove oneself. Third is old karma that makes us prone to outbursts, prone to judgment, prone to uttering unkind words. These three factors make words an invisible knife, cutting into ourselves, into others, and into the relationships we cherish. If you notice, the times we suffer from others' words are often when we are not mindful enough to let go. But when we hurt because of our own words, it's because we are not mindful enough to guard our mouth. Karma lies right there, very close, not far away, and blessings also form from there. When we know how to speak less, we create fewer opportunities for suffering and negative karma to interfere in our lives. Do you know? In the sutras, the Buddha gently taught that body, speech, and mind are all places where karma is created. When the body acts virtuously, blessings arise. When speech is virtuous, blessings are great. When thought is virtuous, blessings are deep. That is not difficult to understand. A good action can help one person, but a good word can touch many people at once. A virtuous thought can change our entire attitude towards life in a day. Therefore, keeping speech karma pure is a very great merit. The Buddha also said that words are like arrows. Once shot, they cannot be retrieved. But unlike arrows, words have the power to spread, creating long-lasting effects. A wholesome word can save a person's life. A malicious word can create karma for 100 lifetimes. Speech karma is created much faster than body karma, because the body still needs time and action. But words only need an intention to arise, to leave the mouth. So if we are mindful for 1 second, we preserve blessings. If we are careless for 1 second, we can deplete the merits we have accumulated for so long. I want to tell you a small story that I witnessed firsthand. It is simple, yet profound enough to move anyone who looks deeply into the simple things of life. That day, I was waiting for a bus in front of a small supermarket. The sun was gentle. People were passing by, busy, but not in a hurry. I saw a woman selling lottery tickets approaching each person. Her face was tanned from the sun, her clothes faded, her shoes worn in many places. She spoke softly, with a gentle smile, trying to hide the hardships of life. When she approached a man who was dressed quite elegantly, she had just opened her mouth when he waved her away with harsh words. He said unpleasant things that made her freeze, her eyes cast down, as if touching a long-held humiliation. Her eyes momentarily welled up, but she tried to hold back. She was just selling a few lottery tickets, but the way that man spoke was as if she had offended him. At that moment, a man standing nearby, named Mr. Hung, witnessed the scene. He wasn't the type to talk a lot or show off, but he saw it and approached calmly, without tension. He didn't take sides with harsh words, didn't scold the man. He simply said a very simple sentence. "She's just trying to make a living. Please speak a little more gently." There was no condemnation in his words, no feeling that he was taking anyone's side or wanting anyone to be wrong. He simply placed a hand on the man's shoulder, gently. His composure immediately calmed the atmosphere. The man looked up at him and then exhaled, as if realizing he had spoken too harshly. He nodded slightly and then turned to the woman and apologized. The lottery vendor then burst into tears, not because of the apology, but because after so many days enduring harsh words, that day someone was willing to say something kind about her. She thanked Mr. Hung with a trembling voice, her eyes red-rimmed, but shining with a little warmth. I stood nearby, just watching, and my heart also softened. Perhaps you will think that story is too small, but to that woman, it was not small at all. It was a drop of cool water falling on the parched earth of her life. Sometimes a kind word can help someone get back on their feet for another day. And sometimes an unkind word can extinguish all remaining efforts of someone clinging to hope. I kept thinking about Mr. Hung's words. They weren't flowery, not philosophical, not grand, but they contained compassion, mindfulness, and blessings. That's what many people overlook. Blessings are not something distant or mysterious. Blessings are simply when we lighten another person's heart, when we don't hurt anyone further, when we speak a gentle enough word to keep our own mind pure. From that story, I understood even more deeply. Blessings come from the mouth when we know when to stop. Blessings come when we remind ourselves that anger is temporary, but karma created is long-lasting. Many people ask me, how can life be less miserable? I usually say, you just need to speak a little less, not out of submission or enduring silence, but to be silent to hear your own heart more clearly, and to discern which words should be spoken and which should not. When you react less, you don't create more turmoil in your mind. When you utter fewer bad words, your blessings are not diminished. When you add more kind words, your blessings increase every day. This is not some vague concept. This is very clear cause and effect. Malicious words are like a stone thrown into water. It creates ripples that spread far and wide, ripples that we ourselves cannot fully measure. Wholesome words, on the other hand, are like clear water drops falling into a stream. They make the water cooler and clearer over time. If we understand this, we will change how we speak every day. We will be slower before uttering words. We will ask ourselves if this sentence will lighten or burden the other person's heart. We will ask ourselves if this sentence will preserve our blessings or erode them. We will ask ourselves if the words we speak come from wisdom or from ego. And you know, just by asking such questions, the mind will naturally soften. When the mind is soft, words will be wholesome. When words are wholesome, life will be peaceful. That is a very beautiful logical sequence. It doesn't require lofty philosophy, just your own mindfulness. We often think practice is difficult, but guarding speech karma is actually the closest, easiest, and most effective path of practice. Just by practicing breathing before speaking every day, pausing a little before reacting, thinking about the other person's emotions before opening our mouth. We don't need to say profound things. Just avoid saying words that hurt others. Just avoid depleting our own blessings. When our mind is calmer, our face is gentler, our words are lighter, then all relationships naturally become smoother. Peace does not come from great wealth, but from a mouth that knows how to choose its words. Blessings do not come from afar, but from very small, kind words in life. I hope you remember that every time you speak a gentle sentence, you not only make others feel better, but you also create an invisible layer of blessings around yourself. A person with blessings, whatever they say, others will accept. A person whose blessings are exhausted, whatever they say, seems to create trouble. Therefore, guarding the mouth is guarding blessings. Speaking wholesome words is sowing blessings. Speaking fewer bad words is protecting blessings. Once blessings remain with you, everything will naturally become lighter. The path you walk will be wider, and your mind will be more at peace. That is why I always remind my friends that simply by keeping their words gentle, their life has already changed by half. I want to send you a very calm message. In this life, you don't need to say much to prove you are strong. True strength lies in knowing when to be silent and when to speak. You don't need to use grand, powerful words to be respected. Wise people often use words like spring water, gentle and clear. Blessed people often speak with compassion, so everyone who hears them feels at ease. You just need to remember one thing. Every word you speak is a seed sown into life. Good seeds will bloom into good flowers. Bad seeds will bear bitter fruit. So choose to sow flowers. Speak words that warm people's hearts. Choose kindness as the place from which your words emerge. Then you will find life as light as a breath. When you speak less, your life suffers less. When you guard your speech karma, your mind will be at peace. When you speak wholesome words, blessings will naturally come. I believe that if you start today, your life will change in the gentlest way you never expected. Dear friend, as we have walked a long path together, from the confusion in communication, the suffering created by words, to the lessons about cause and effect, and mindfulness in speech karma, I want to invite you to pause for a moment and take a gentle breath. Perhaps in your life, there have been days when everything became heavy, just because of a few disagreeable words. Perhaps there were times when you felt tired because you were still thinking late into the night about someone's words to you. Or perhaps you have regretted accidentally uttering words that hurt others. In modern life, with too much information, too much interaction, too much noise, people seem to forget the value of silence. We speak quickly, react quickly, express quickly, but precisely because we are too quick. The mind has not yet settled. Words have not yet become gentle. Emotions have not yet calmed down to become more endearing. Nowadays, people rarely pause before speaking. We are always eager to express our views, to win an argument, to prove ourselves right. We fear that silence will make us underestimated, disadvantaged, or perceived as weak. But the longer I live, the more I realize that silence is a very beautiful form of strength. It is not evasion, not cowardice, but a moment when we return to ourselves to see what truly needs to be said. Life is already noisy enough. We don't need to add more noise from within our hearts. When we don't know how to settle down, words often become colored by ego. And wherever there is ego, there is suffering. We suffer not because of what others say, but because our mind is agitated by others' words. We suffer not because someone is wrong, but because we want to be right. We suffer not because of circumstances, but because we don't know how to face circumstances with a peaceful mind. And all these things are related to speech. A word or reaction born from ego leaves resentment. A word stemming from an unsettled mind creates karma. A word not enlightened by mindfulness hurts oneself and others. Suffering from words thus comes very quickly, often even faster than actions. The Buddha taught that body, speech, and mind are the three gateways to creating karma. If body karma is karma seen with the eyes, and mind karma is silent karma, then speech karma is the clearest, most common, and easiest to create. The Buddha taught that there are two kinds of words. One is words like honey, and two are words like a knife. Words like honey help the listener's mind calm down, and the speaker's heart also brightens. Words like a knife cut into the hearts of others, and also cut into one's own blessings. Wholesome words bring blessings. Unwholesome words deplete blessings. When we understand this, we realize that guarding gentle words is not a trivial matter, but the first step towards a life of wisdom and mindfulness. I have encountered many stories that deeply convinced me of the power of wholesome words. Once, I visited a family in a small rural area. In a simple house, a man over 40 was caring for his seriously ill mother. I asked him if he was tired. He smiled and said that it was indeed hard. But just by saying a few loving words to his mother, his mind immediately lightened. His mother also felt more at peace hearing her son's gentle voice. He said that when he was young, he was very quick-tempered and spoke harshly, so there were frequent conflicts in the family. It was only when his mother fell ill that he began to learn to speak more slowly, more gently. The more gently he spoke, the more at peace his mind felt. The more kindly he spoke, the more warmth he felt in the house. Already burdened with much illness and pain, by guarding his words, he also preserved harmony, kept his mother's trust, and maintained his own serenity. And I have also witnessed families where the distance grew wider and wider just because of a few harsh words. Some people wouldn't look at each other for an entire month just because of a word spoken in anger. Some people lost a beautiful friendship just because they couldn't hold back a few words of blame. At that time, everyone thought they were right. But as time passed, they realized that right or wrong no longer mattered. What mattered was that they had loved each other, but had hurt each other with words. I tell you these stories so you can see that words can nourish or destroy a relationship. And when a relationship is damaged, inner peace is hard to find again. Through many experiences, I clearly realized one thing. When you speak less, your mind becomes less agitated. When your mind is less agitated, your heart suffers less. When your heart suffers less, blessings naturally come. That is a subtle but very true chain of cause and effect. Speaking less is not silently enduring. Speaking less means knowing when to speak and when to hold back so as not to create more waves in the heart. When the mind is at peace, even one word you speak is bright. When the mind is agitated, even one word you speak becomes heavy. I remember one afternoon when I was sitting and drinking tea at an old market corner. Next to me was an old woman selling vegetables. The old woman was very calm, even though buyers sometimes said a few unpleasant things. I asked her if she was sad when people spoke harshly to her. She smiled gently and said that if they are angry, speaking more will only make them angrier. So it's better to be silent for a bit, like wind blowing past the ears. If I keep my gentleness, I'll sleep well at night. If they keep their anger, they'll be tired at night. The old woman hadn't studied much, didn't know high philosophy, but her words were full of wisdom. Her silence was the silence of one who understood life, understood people, and understood herself. The truth is, silence is not emptiness. Silence is the foundation of wisdom and blessings. In silence, we hear our own breath. In silence, we realize what is worth saying and what should be carried away by the wind. In silence, we clearly see the suffering of others and feel our own heart. When we are silent with mindfulness, we are giving ourselves a great gift. We are no longer swept away by meaningless arguments, no longer swayed by teasing words, no longer wasting energy on things not worth bothering about. So how do we begin to guard gentle words in daily life? This is when we return to the practice of mindfulness. Just by taking a breath before speaking, you will see your words change immediately. Just by placing your hand on your chest and feeling your heartbeat for a moment, you will see your mind soften. Just by looking into the eyes of the person opposite you and knowing they also have their own sufferings, you will naturally want to speak more gently. Just remember that every word you speak is a seed sown into your own mind and the minds of others, and you will choose kind words. This is a very simple but incredibly effective practice. Mindfulness in speech is not a distant concept. It lies in the breath, in awareness, and in compassion. You can also practice a small thing. Every night before bed, you ask yourself if you made anyone sad with your words today. If so, you look deeply into it and vow that tomorrow you will be kinder. If not, you thank yourself for keeping your speech karma pure. When you do this regularly, you will feel your mind as light as a cloud. A light mind leads to deep sleep. A peaceful mind leads to a peaceful life. My dear friend, life doesn't need us to say too much. Life only needs us to say what is worth saying. What is worth saying is what brings peace and joy. What is not worth saying is what causes harm. When you know how to choose between these two, you have opened a new path for yourself. That path is not noisy. That path is as peaceful as the first light of day. That path helps you walk slower, deeper, and more beautifully with every step. And you will realize that speaking less is the beginning of a peaceful life. Before concluding this conversation, I want to send you a blessing. May you always know how to embrace yourself with gentle words. May you know how to maintain harmony with kind words. May you have enough mindfulness to stop before hurting anyone. May you have enough love to speak words that warm people's hearts. And may you always keep a little silence within you so that wisdom can grow every day. Remember that silence is not emptiness, but the foundation of wisdom and blessings. Remember that when you speak less, your life suffers less. If you keep this in your heart, you will see life soften, little by little. Your path will be less bumpy. Those around you will also feel more at ease, and you yourself will find the peace you have been searching for all this time. Thank you for accompanying me to the very end of this section. I wish you a peaceful night, a gentle tomorrow, and a heart light enough to navigate all the ups and downs of life.